Hi, my name is Bob, and the day that I thought that I would start making YouTube videos I never thought would come. But I've been going through a lot right now, and it seems like everything might be, well, probably is related to Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, or EDS for short. Um, and my story's kind of weird. I I always thought something wasn't right. Maybe not so much when I was a kid. I'm 36 years old now. I think the first thing that was really different was towards the end of high school. I went through a lot of like mental depression, things like that. Um, never, I never really figured out why. A lot of times you have depression and you feel, there's something that's bringing you down, um, or it's the chemical imbalances. It never seemed to be like it was depression, and yet it wasn't, and I never really could explain what I meant by that. We would start an SSRI, and I'd get better for a while, and then all of a sudden it's just I'm down again, and I don't know why that is. What you know what's going on? Um, there was one time that I did visit a psychiatrist, and the thought of ADD came up, and I'm mesmerized by the brain. I love psychology. I went to school for a year for psychology, but didn't pursue that because I had better opportunities in the computer industry, which I also love. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't because when all said and done, I like psychology as a hobby. Um, I don't want to do it professionally. In some ways, I think I learn more just doing it as a hobby. And I know that sounds weird and maybe controversial, but you know. Um, but anyway, I started looking into ADD or ADHD, which I never really had the hyperactivity part, but that's what it was called. So I started looking into it, and it really fit. It really fit, and I started on Adderall later, and it was a miracle. It changed my life around. I was focusing more. I actually had less anxiety. It was crazy. Before being diagnosed with ADD, I had panic attacks constantly, and you know, back then it was kind of like a lot of people thought it's in your head. It's all in your head. You need to talk through it. Therapy every now and then helped a little bit, but never really did much. I still had these panic attacks, and I was talking with the one psychiatrist. He, he kind of like one of the big advantages I had is my family doctor. When I lived at home, which was in Pennsylvania, I grew up in Pennsylvania. My family doctor and I talked a lot. He was very open. He listened to a lot of things that I would say, and a lot of times, and he trusted my judgment. A lot of times, I would go in and say, "Hey, you know what? I ran across this medicine. I think it might make a difference." And he would give me, within the medical, this is safe, this isn't safe. We try different things because we were all at a loss. So anyway, I was having these anxiety issues, and the psychiatrist that was uh, evaluating the possibility of ADHD was a little bit concerned because, well, amphetamines can induce anxiety and panic, and I already have anxiety and panic issues. So he's a little bit worried. But fortunately, my family doctor talked to him and said, "Well, you can trust Bob. He understands more about his body than anybody. Basically saying that if something went wrong, I'm the kind of person that would be able to recognize it and know to stop until we can figure out what's going on." And the amazing thing was, is once I started the Adderall, I actually don't even think I've had a panic attack since then. And I want to say I was 19 at the time, 20, somewhere around there. It was I was out of high school at the time. I was dealing with the depression in towards the end of high school, and I was out of. I'm pretty sure. I mean, that far back, it's kind of a blur. I'm pretty sure that it was outside of high school when I was diagnosed with ADD, and in fact, I'm pretty positive of it. Um, so we'll say somewhere between 20, 21, 22, somewhere around there. And things got better. The Adderall was working amazingly. I was functioning very well. Depression went away. I still had some bouts of depression here and there, I was still on an SSRI as well. Never really knew if it was necessary, but we just kind of, hey, you know what, it's working. Let's not rock the boat. Um, Moved to Virginia in I think it was 2005 for a job. I'm now self-employed. Never intended to be self-employed. It just kind of happened, and things have been going great for the most part. Except it was about 4 years ago. Um, I was on pretty high dosing of Adderall. Currently, my dosing is one 30 milligram XR and two 20 milligram immediate releases per day. That's a really high dosage. But this is about 4 years ago. Um, it was weird. It just kind of stopped working. Um, but it was weird because I'd have one day where it didn't feel like I took it at all, and then the next day, oh, everything's okay. It's no big deal. Um, I went through everything, doctor after doctor after doctor, specialist. Fibromyalgia came up. Yeah, okay. I put on some Balta, and didn't really do anything. I did find that fibromyalgia, I had these weird shooting pains that would just come and go, and it was random. Any point in my body they could show up. Cymbalta is supposed to treat fibromyalgia. I was on Zoloft at the time, so we switched from Zoloft to Cymbalta to hopefully kill two birds with one stone. It didn't do anything. At this point in time, well, let's go back and say that I visited multiple GI doctors, ear, nose, and throat doctors, neurologists. I can't even list to you the different specialists that I'd gone to review something, and they found something, but it never really fit. It worked for a little bit, but long term, it just kind of fizzled out. And that was where we were with fibromyalgia. Around the same time, I want to say it was in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. I joined a local fire department and went through the training to be a firefighter. Made it through. Cured my fear of heights. I was definitely afraid of heights before that, but whenever you're in fire academy and they say, hey, throw this ladder up to that 4-story building and climb to the roof, you you kind of get used to it. So I'd left the fire department because of personal reasons unrelated to medical. There was a lot of, I don't know, anybody that has been a firefighter knows about firehouse drama. I was dealing with that. So I left for a while. But right around the time that shortly before being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I had actually decided to join the department again. I missed it. I wanted to go back to it. And, heart attacks are the number one killer for firefighters. And I knew about coenzyme Q10, CoQ10, helps your heart. And I just decided that, you know what, I'm going to start taking this just because I could use the extra protection. The weird thing is when I started taking that, these phantom pains went away. Now, this is prior to being, in all honesty, I don't know if I was ever actually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. It was kind of like a working diagnosis. But before it was even that, we'd switched to Cymbalta from Zoloft prior to even bringing that in, just because, hey, it's the same thing, it might help. And it wasn't helping with the pains and stuff like that. But when I started taking the CoQ10, the phantom pains went away. I don't know. I can't explain that. I don't know why. My GP, I mentioned to Tammy. He said, just keep taking it. Don't stop. If it's working, do it. I still take it. And I don't have a lot of those weird phantom pains that were coming, and I'll keep taking it. It's not gonna hurt me. It seems to help me. There was a time that I ran out, and about 2 days after that, like I don't know, I'm very forgetful. Stop at the store, forget to pick it up. It was about 2 days of not having it. All of a sudden, I started having weird phantom pains again, and of course, then I remembered I need to pick up another bottle of CoQ10. Started taking it. Those phantom pains went away. But we still have this issue where I can't focus. I'm drained and I'm getting tireder. I go to work and I'm just like, I do really well and I want to accomplish this, but like I find myself doing shorter days. Thankfully, I'm self-employed. I tend to get things done. A lot of my customers tell me that they really appreciate the work and that I do really good work. And, I don't think I'm anything special, but I am driven. I want to make sure that people are taken care of, make sure my customers are taken care of and things like that. And I get it done as best I can. But, coming from somebody that I live about 40 minutes from the majority of my customers. When I was in the fire department, I lived in a different town. It was about an hour from the majority of my customers in the data center. So I would always try to work really long days so that I wasn't driving that. If I work 3 12-hour days, rather than 5 shorter days, I save in gas, save a lot of time. And that was kind of what I did. Those days have started getting really, really long. I loved them. I loved working them, but all of a sudden I just wasn't able to do that anymore. I was getting just drained. I had to keep sitting down. I constantly found myself going to the break room, taking a break, and just sitting and playing a game for 30 minutes. And what I was finding was just sitting down and playing the game for 30 minutes revitalized me. And people kind of think in the typical terms of corporate America. You're taking breaks, that's not efficient. You need to get the work done. I saw it a different way. I bill my customers hourly, so while I'm sitting in the break room for a half hour, I'm not billing anybody, so I'm not abusing it. But after I took that half-hour break and I went back into the areas that I was working at, I was actually more efficient. And I couldn't figure out why. I mean, I started thinking, my thought was, well, you know what, I'm taking this Adderall. Maybe the Adderall just, I started having this feeling that the Adderall just wasn't being metabolized right. My body wasn't processing it, which is why sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, because it just kind of, my body just processed it differently. And I mean, this continued to go on and on and on and on and on. It was this last March, one of my customers was doing a huge move. They were moving all of their equipment from one data center to another. And as a result, they had members of their own company coming on site, and they were assisting. I was there too. And I met somebody who, somehow the conversation turned to medical. And this person told me about EDS, and he showed me the crazy things he could do with his arms, and but what really struck me was what he went through as a child, and how nobody knew what was wrong with him, and just nothing made sense, and that really struck me. So I went home and I started looking up EDS, Ehlers Danlos, and I'm reading these descriptions. I'm like, I'm not flexible. This doesn't fit me at all. This can't be it. But it really, the stuff that he went through was like that. I'm like, man, that's what I was dealing with. Doctors just saying, yeah, he did have a little bit of a different reaction from doctors in that they kind of gave him really bad diagnosis. I think he said that he was diagnosed with a seizure disorder. One doctor told him he probably wouldn't live through his 20s. I never really had that type of thing, but it just struck a chord. Just in dealing with doctors, I'm like, man, this is what I'm dealing with. This is, but the disease just didn't fit. I mean, I'm not flexible. I can't do what this guy was showing me he could do. And when I read about Ehlers Danlos, on, the main medical sites, the descriptions are all about flexibility, and I'm not flexible. I never saw myself as flexible, and I don't think anybody else ever really saw myself as flexible. So that kind of just, I didn't really pursue that at all. But things kept getting worse and worse, and I was just constantly searching for, like, my symptoms and trying to find something. And I hate, I there's so many people out there that will go on the internet and they start looking for what's wrong with them, and next thing you know, they're doing these armchair diagnosis, and I don't like that. I think that's bad. But at the same time, the medical community didn't have any answers for me. I needed to figure something out. So I just kept looking. And I ran across some things that kind of fit a little bit and never really panned out. But at one point, I saw somebody post about postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS for short. And this hit me. This hit me hard. Everything that was described in this, and I never really took my pulse all that much, but when I started reading about the the rise in the heartbeat and things like that. Well, actually, I should kind of go back a little bit. Shortly before this time, my GP actually put me on a like a Holter monitor, where for I forget how many weeks it was, but I wore a heart monitor where it would be triggered if it saw something weird. It would trigger an event, record it, and then whenever the time was up, I sent it back to the company. They reviewed it, sent it to my doctor, and that had shown that I had severe tachycardia. I think it recorded times that my heart rate was over 180. It went to like 190, I think, at one point. But my sinus rhythm was always dead on. And the logging, the way I would do it is, once it recorded 5 events, I had to hold it up to a phone and transmit the data to the company that logged it. And at that time, I had to tell them, well, whenever it was recorded, whenever I triggered it, or what was going on at the time. And the thing was, is these tachycardia syndromes were happening at points that I wasn't really doing anything. Like they would happen while I was just driving. I'm sitting in my car driving, and all of a sudden it's recording tachycardia. He sent me to a cardiologist, and it was the worst cardiologist, the worst doctor I'd ever seen in my life. One of the first things that triggered the first event that made my GP think that we need to look at the heart was I play pinball. I'm in a pinball league. I know that's not something you hear most people say, but it's something that I enjoy. And the thing was, is I was playing, and this isn't like, I've been in competitions too, and this wasn't a competition. It was just league play, where there's a little bit of competition, but they do this every week. This is nothing miraculous, And I'm playing pinball, and I feel my heart is just fluttering. Like, my arms kind of went numb. I didn't lose any control. I was still playing fine, but this sensation was just weird. And this is what led to my GP putting the monitor on me so that we could look at it. And so anyway, after the results come in, we see the tachycardia. I go see this cardiologist, and I start explaining to this. And this doctor was more like, he just thought it was hilarious that I played pinball, as like that. I don't know. He found that more humorous and was more interested in that than he was of what was actually going wrong. And he said, well, we could put you on medicine, but I don't really think that's necessary. I don't think there's anything really wrong with you. And I'll send a report back to your GP. And I'm like, no, there's something wrong with me. Yeah, I live my life fine. Nobody sees this, but there's something not right here. Because of that driven personality that I told you about, like, if I had a headache, or if I was miserable or tired or worn out, I was still at work getting the job done, because that's what I wanted to do. And I pushed through. And a lot of times, like, it's kind of been one of the things is, like, I'd say I'm having headaches. What's pinpointing your headache? Is it your sinuses? Because I have horrible sinus issues. Is it just a headache? What point of your head hurts? Is there pain in your neck? I've been going to a chiropractor mostly all my life. The thing was, is I've worked on computers all the time, so my head was always kind of aimed down, and it caused the curvature of my spine, through my neck, and that's kind of just what it was. That's what it was believed is that's where all these headaches were coming from and all this weird stuff. So losing my train of thought now. So I'm at this cardiologist, and I told right when I was about to leave for this visit. He's telling me that there's nothing wrong with me, and he'll let my doctor know that. I said, this just isn't like there's got to be something, I mean, obviously my heart's doing this, and at the last minute he said, all right, we'll do a treadmill test on you, and we'll see what that shows, just to cover it, totally just to appease me. He wanted to do this treadmill test, so all right. So that test comes, and I go in, and I need to change into sweatpants, shirt, t-shirt to run on the treadmill. And I change, and I'm sitting. They hook me up to everything, and I'm just sitting on the table, waiting for the doctor to come in. And at that point, I'm watching, I'm hooked up. I'm not doing anything, but the computer monitor is off to the side. That's actually showing my vitals. And I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, it's just bizarre. My heart rate will be 120, and then all of a sudden it drops to 90, and then it just goes back up, and I'm like, I was just blown away from it. It didn't stay at 120 much. It usually went around 80 or 90 while I was sitting. But then the doctor came in and he said, okay, let's get started. And I stood up. And as soon as I stood up, not immediately, but before I even made it to the treadmill, I happened to see on the monitor that my heart rate went up to 135 just from standing up. And it it blew my mind. I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. And it stayed there for a while. And then we started the treadmill test, and you're supposed to do it for 10 minutes. They got really close to calling it at 8 or 9 because my heart rate was up to, I think it was at 190 at that point. I think that I can't remember if I actually hit 200 or if it came up to 199, but I was I was right on that borderline of 200 beats per minute at the end of the treadmill test. And I'm out of shape, it's not that big, that was kind of even my thought is, 200 beats a minute. I'm a computer geek. I'm not in the most shape. That's probably it. But here's what got me. Whenever you're done with that, your heart rate is always high. No matter how high it is, your heart rate is higher. So before they disconnect you and everything, they have to wait for your heart rate to settle. And I was sitting on the table, and my heart rate eventually made it down to about 125, and it stayed there. And it stayed there. And it stayed there. At this point, the doctor's out of the room. The nurse is there. And the nurse, I can just tell the nurse is this, something's not right. This is just not normal. She went and got the doctor. The doctor came in and we'll give him another few minutes, and walks back out. And I'm still at above 120. It's drifting up and down a little bit, but I'm really right around 120, 125, somewhere around there. She goes and gets the doctor. Again, the doctor comes in and he says, it's all right. Go ahead and end the test. And that was it. That was the end of it. Nothing's wrong with me, even though the nurse obviously saw something wrong with me. I don't know. That was it. So it was about May, maybe? I think it was somewhere around May, where I ran across a post online about POTS. And I read about the skyrocketing heart rate, and all of a sudden, things started clicking. I'm like, this completely makes sense to me. Absolutely makes sense to me. And I actually ordered a pulse ox, put it on my finger, And I did. I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but I essentially did some of the stuff that they monitor on a tilt table test, where I would lay down, look at my pulse. I'd sit up, and I'd say sitting up, my pulse maybe 20 beats a minute, something like that. But when I stood up, that was the kicker. My pulse in almost every single scenario, if I stood up, not working out, just standing up, my pulse would go up to 120, 130 beats per minute. Not instantly, but pretty close to it. You would see it skyrocket. Sometimes it would come down a little bit, but it was there. This was just, this had to be it. But the one funny thing was, before I had a chance to email my doctor about what I was seeing, I was actually talking to my roommate, and he's an EMT, so I was just kind of bouncing some things off of him, and I wanted to show him what was happening, and I couldn't. My pulse wasn't going up at the time, and I thought this was really bizarre. Turns out what I think was happening was I had actually just eaten Taco Bell, and I ate a lot of Taco Bell. And with what I had, I looked at what the sodium content was of what I ate, and it had 2.5 grams of salt in what I had just consumed. So anybody that knows about POTS, salt is actually one of the treatments you take. You actually take sodium. So it was kind of funny. But anyway, I emailed my doctor. I said, look, I think I have POTS. This just fits. And he emailed me back and said, yeah, you know what? This is actually a possibility. I think you need to go see Dr. Abdallah. He's in Herndon, Virginia. And so I called to make an appointment, but I'm 36. He's a pediatric cardiologist. Therefore, under normal circumstances, I'm not able to visit the office. However, they had this VIP program for adults that you have to pay. It was something like $1,000 to get into this program. And I just couldn't afford it. There was just no way that it was going to happen. So I started looking for other doctors, and there was a doctor that was listed on Dinet, I think it's dinet.org, as treating POTS. He was in Pittsburgh, which is roughly where my family lives. So I figured, you know what, I'll make an appointment with him, and, I can just go up and stay with my parents for the appointment. It wasn't ideal, but, it was something that would work. He couldn't see me until September, middle of September. So I made the appointment, and I kept things open to try to find somewhere else to go that maybe could get me in sooner. So I happened to. It was July 4th. I think it was it was the weekend before or after or something like that. I went up to visit family, and I was staying at my parents, and I had this. I don't even know how to explain it. I had this event where I was lightheaded. I was confused. I didn't, my dad was telling me stuff, and all of a sudden, he ended what he was telling me with a question, and I went, wait, what are we what? I don't know what he said. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea what he said. My heart was doing crazy things with the pulse, horrible headaches, and I started having those chest pains and that fluttering and arms going numb, and and there's part of me that's like, I've been here before. I felt exactly like this. I've gone to an urgent care, and they said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with you. I don't really want to do it again and waste the money. But my mom kind of pressured me, and she said, something's wrong, and you need to get it checked out. Some of those are signs of a heart attack. The thing that got me was the confusion, the mental, that stuff isn't abnormal for me, but it was at a level that was. So I agreed to go to the ER. And I went to the ER, and, Nothing wrong with me. They did all of the scans and everything. There was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Did an X-ray of my heart, EKG, all that stuff. Nothing was wrong with me at all. My mom at that point had said, "You need help. You need to figure this out," and she agreed to lend me the money so that I could go see Dr. Abdallah. I called him probably mid-July. He was on vacation, and then I was on vacation, and I wasn't able to get into until mid-August. So I went, and on the first visit, he pretty much diagnosed me with POTS. He said it's evident. It wasn't an official diagnosis because you need to do the tilt table test, which we scheduled. And when we did the tilt table test, I think they said it was 17% reduction in blood flow to my brain while I was standing up. And of course, that was at that moment. It could be more or less on any given day. So I had POTS. But it was the next evaluation that I went, the follow-up visit that I went to see Dr. Abdallah, that really had me confused. He came in, and absolute first thing he did was he took my pinky and he bent it backwards like this. What is this guy doing? I'm here for cardiovascular and he's bending my finger backwards. What's the deal? And he started asking me about family history, and my grandfather had died of an aneurysm. So there's a family history of aneurysms, but I didn't know how deep it went because while I was at the doctor's office, I sent my mom a text asking her about aneurysms. And the response was, yeah, almost every male in your dad's family has died of an aneurysm or had an aneurysm. And when I told the doctor that, you could tell that in his mind something triggered. And I didn't really understand what. I didn't know, I didn't really understand how all this fit. But I remember, actually, after I asked that, or whenever I told him that, he had gone out for something. We were getting set up to do an ultrasound of, we were doing ultrasound of my heart. So he'd come back in, and he had asked me, he had asked me if I heard back. And I said, yeah, this is the deal with the aneurysms. And I'm laying on my side, and he had a monitor here. And as soon as I said that, he moves the wand up to here and starts scanning here. And then it hit me. I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe he's scanning for aneurysms. That would make sense. But what got me was he sat me up, and he put my arms behind me like this. And hopefully you can see that. I didn't know I could do that. And I also didn't know what the hell this guy was doing, putting my hands behind my back. I'm here for a cardiovascular issue. And it was at this point that he started telling me, you are showing signs of Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. And I'm like, what's that? And here's the thing, I had discussed this with this person back in March, but I didn't remember the name of it. And it didn't hit me until after I left the office and was at work. It hit me. Oh my gosh. Is this ED? Is this what he has? Is this what this guy had? And he was telling me about, and I completely rejected it? And if so, why? I'm not flexible. I can't, my elbow, I don't know, it doesn't seem, to me it doesn't seem flexible. I don't know. This doesn't make sense to me until I started really looking into EDS, and I started noticing things. My body pops. There's daily. Anytime I move something, pop, click, pop. I mean, everything. And I didn't realize that's part of it. This is actually part of Ehlers Danlos. I didn't realize that sinuses can be a factor in Ehlers Danlos. Um, POTS is a big factor of Ehlers Danlos. I didn't know any of this. Um, and it's bizarre to think that this is actually Ehlers Danlos. This is what's going on. Uh, and I don't know, it seems weird to me. In being diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos, all of a sudden things have started clicking. They things are making sense, and I can't think of most of them off the top of my head, but I know just like things popping in my head. I'm like, wait, when I was a kid, that explains that. Um, and actually, the ADD is actually kind of explained by this. I think. Um, it's possible that I may not be ADD, or that maybe the ADD comes from EDS. I don't know. But what I can tell you is, in starting Mitadream, um, my life has changed quite a bit. There's still a lot wrong, um, and it's likely that it's other complications from EDS. Um, but I can stand up. I don't wear out as much, except that I'm supposed to take the medicine every 2 hours, or I'm sorry, every 3 hours. But after 2 hours, all of a sudden my legs start feeling like lead again. I have to sit down. I'm worn out. I start sweating. I'm tired. I feel like I need to take a nap. Um, and then I take my next dose, and those symptoms kind of start going away. After about 3 weeks on the medicine, I went to King's Dominion, and I'm walking around the park riding roller coasters. If any of you are in the Virginia area and you've rode Intimidator 305, you'll know that after the first drop on the first turn, probably half the people that ride it go into a gray out scenario where they're on that. The medical term is syncope. Um, but you start getting tunnel vision. Things start going white just because of the maximum G forces. And I don't care. I love the ride, so I ride it anyway. But it was interesting being on this medicine. I didn't have. It was there. I mean, I started getting a little bit of tunnel vision, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what it usually was, which was kind of interesting to me. What was more interesting was the day after, my muscles hurt, and this was actually the first time that I felt my muscles hurt in a way that was from working out. You know, I'd never felt that pain. Not never, but it had been a really long time since I had felt that kind of a pain. My legs hurt all the time. You know, and I always just assumed I'm getting old. You know, this is just the way life is. I'm getting old. This is what happens, you know. I wrote all of this off. Headaches, you know, sinus pressure, you know. I never really thought about these things. They were just part of life. So much of my life was just part of life, and I'm slowly starting to find out that there's a lot of things that have happened in my life that all make sense. Um, you know, one of the most interesting things was, and one of the things that always stuck with me was long before the ADD diagnosis, when we were dealing with depression, my doctor had said, you know, I just talked to somebody, another doctor, that had found that there was a medicine called Viscan, which was a beta blocker, that they'd seen some research that showed that it helps with social anxiety and some kinds of depression. And he said, you know, at this point, we're kind of looking for things. You know, this is long before the ADD diagnosis or anything. He said, do you want to try it? And I said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. And this stuff was amazing. If I started feeling a little bit depressed, I could take one of these pills, and within 5 or 10 minutes, I was feeling good again. I wasn't really depressed. And I never understood it. I don't think he ever really understood it, and no doctor that I had ever seen after that, you know, we never really understood it. Now, I've been trying to remember why we stopped the Viscan prescription, but I think that it came whenever we switched to the ADD diagnosis, and with being on Adderall, I couldn't be on beta blockers, so that's why that stopped. But it was something that always was in my mind of why? Nobody else really saw this happen. Uh, why? And nobody knew. Nobody could explain why it worked the way it did for me. Um, you know, until now, I find that POTS, one of the treatments of POTS is actually beta blockers, and POTS seems to interact with beta receptors, and all of a sudden that clicked. I can't sit here and tell you the medical description of exactly what was going on or why it was happening, but it makes sense. There was some kind of interaction, and there's been other weird medical interactions. Codeine. There was one time I was on codeine, and it made me hyper. That's not what it does. It knocks you out. Now, for me, it made me hyper. There was one time that with sinus issues, an ENT put me on prednisone, and that was a nightmare. I felt good, but I probably, if it would have progressed, if I would have stayed on it, I would have been arrested. That's how like my mental state changed so drastically that I was kind of out of control. And that's a steroidal reaction to some extent, but not to the level that I was at. And from that point on, I told doctors, they asked me if I'm allergic to anything, and I say, no, but do not put me on a steroid, because I was scared. Like, I don't want, like, I've been scared of that. But what's interesting is as I start finding out how much steroids interact with EDS and how steroids kind of interact with POTS. And there is a steroid that actually is a treatment for POTS. I don't know. It's interesting. In some ways, I kind of wonder if, to some extent, while I was out of control, I felt good. I'm kind of wondering if even back then, if I had POTS symptoms back then, I don't really know for sure, but if I did, was it actually treating it? Obviously, it was too high of a dose. I don't know. I'm too scared to try steroids again. But I don't know. It's one of those curious things. And just for information's sake, another really curious thing is I went for a sleep study about a year and a half ago, and I wasn't shown to have narcolepsy, but he thought that I had some signs of narcolepsy. This was before the POTS diagnosis, which obviously at this point, that makes sense. POTS kind of fits into that. But he said, let's try to take you off the Adderall and put you on Nuvigil or Provigil. I forget which one we tried first. But I knew about these medicines because I had been looking for alternative treatments for ADD because the Adderall just wasn't working. I had tried Ritalin, and it didn't do anything at all. So we switched back to the Adderall because I was at least getting some benefit out of that. But the interesting thing about midodrine, I knew about this, and I knew that, like, for most people with ADD, it's like the holy grail of drugs. But the problem is the FDA hasn't approved it for that, so you can't just get it. And if you can, your health insurance isn't going to cover it, and it's ridiculously expensive. And he said, well, the sleep doctor said, the thing is you actually have shift work. It actually is, in a sense, I have shift work. I kind of work on my own, but it changes because of different maintenance windows and stuff like that. He said it could be a factor, and in a lot of cases, it's approved for that disorder. So we're gonna try that. But he had the coupon for the first month free because drug companies are drug companies. But it was bizarre. I took it and I fell asleep. It actually put me asleep, and a restful sleep too. I had very vivid dreams and I woke up refreshed. But in taking this medicine, I actually fell asleep. And this is the stuff that the Air Force uses to keep pilots alert on long missions. And here it is putting me to sleep. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. It's just another bizarre thing. But it's interesting. Yeah, I struggle sometimes. I don't understand. EDS makes sense to me now. It makes a lot of things in my history make sense. It makes the way I feel make sense. But it's in some points I'm like, I don't understand. how is it that I'm not really flexible? I don't know. I still in so many ways see that I don't know how to explain how I feel. You know, I kind of think that other people, I've talked to some people in the EDS community, and like I've kind of got some reactions that kind of make me feel like they think I'm stealing their thunder or something. That's not everybody. There's been a lot of people that I've talked to that have been really supportive of it. But at the same time, like I don't understand, some bizarre things. One person said, "Well, you're a cardiologist diagnosed with you with EDS, and he has no business of that." But I come to find out that this doctor actually knows a lot about EDS and probably is more qualified than most of the doctors. He is more qualified than most of the doctors that I've seen. So it's kind of hard for me. They said that I got to go somewhere else, and it's like in a sense, like you're telling me that I have to go find another doctor to disprove this doctor that diagnosed me with EDS. That's kind of weird because most doctors will jump at the chance to discredit EDS. The stories that I've been reading about people like 40 years they've been trying to find what's wrong with them and having doctors laugh at them and why would I do that? I don't it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I finally have something that makes sense to me. I want to know more about it. I want to learn more about it. And I'm sure that it's not been that long that I've been diagnosed. There's a lot more to learn about me and what's going on. The midodrine is taking care of pot symptoms. It's making a huge difference. But I have GI issues. I still have headaches. And these are things that have to be figured out, and I'm sure they will be figured out. But there's more to learn. But why would I go try to discredit this? I don't know. It's bizarre to me. Part of me thinks that if this is the case, I don't seem like I'm flexible. I don't think that. And I know what I thought in March when I first heard EDS described to me. It didn't make sense. I didn't even think it. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And, there's two ways that this goes in my brain. One, I don't have EDS, which I don't really buy, because there's a lot of things that when I start reading the secondary symptoms of EDS, it is fitting more than anything that has ever described. It just fits. Or the other thing that's happening is there's people out there that are even going to doctors that understand EDS and are being rejected because they're not flexible. And I don't know. I can't make sense of this. It's one of the most difficult things for me right now is making sense of that. There's I'm starting to realize some things. Somebody told me, well, if you bend your ear, which I can do, that doesn't hurt at all. Like I can barely even feel it bending at all. Apparently that's a sign of loose cartilage, or I don't know. Even apparently EDS, there's a lot involved with ears, ear shapes, just some weird things. But I can't put my hands flat behind my back. I never thought I could do that. There may be some other things that I don't know. But on the Baton scale, there's not a lot of them. However, I do, from my understanding, is as far as the Baton scale, it's probably the most reliable thing, but it doesn't necessarily rule it out if you have a low score on the scale, provided you have some of the other secondary symptoms, which may well be the case for me. And I think likely is the case for me. I don't think that I really question the EDS diagnosis in me that much. I think the aneurysm history in my family makes a lot of sense. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest factors of my diagnosis is the family history and how severe and prevalent it's been, along with the other things that I'm exhibiting. So in that case, it kind of makes me wonder: is how many people out there have thought EDS and rejected it because they can't bend their elbow backwards, because with the exception of having a doctor that understood POTS and EDS both really well, there's no way that I would have the diagnosis that I have and start figuring out things um, that need to be figured out. So, this is my journey. This is probably the start of my journey. Um, I know what a lot of people in the EDS community think about the headaches and the neck pain and shoulders and stuff like that. I don't want to um, make that call yet. Uh, you know, I don't want to jump to conclusions. I understand the reasons why other things are possible and are likely in a lot of people, but I'm going to cross that bridge as I come there. We'll find more out. Obviously, POTS is a diagnosis, and it is something that medication is helping a lot. It's helping me function. I still have rough days, but it does make it easier. I still have headaches like crazy. Some issues sleeping, actually, a lot of issues sleeping. Um, Things that need to be figured out. And we'll get there. And kind of, it's not fun to have crazy rare diseases. But in some ways, I love puzzles, and Ehlers Danlos kind of fits that puzzle, and it keeps my mind active, which I kind of enjoy. I'm not saying that this is, oh, it's awesome that I've been diagnosed with such a fascinating disease, because it's not. But it is a fascinating disease, and I am interested in learning more about it, and how things will progress in my life, and how we make things better. I you know I'm definitely, at least right now, on the low end of the scale. I'm not affected nearly as badly as the majority of people with EDS. That doesn't mean that won't change in my future. I consider myself blessed for that, and some ways I feel bad. You know, I don't want to steal the thunder from like, I don't know. It's hard to explain that feeling. I wish there was more I could do for the people that have EDS that have more severe symptoms. A lot horrible symptoms. I guess in some ways my part is just to make more people aware of this. People being laughed at by doctors and rejected, and people that, like, doctors saying, no, you know what, you're a hypochondriac, just don't bother coming back, this is just that has to stop. It has to stop, because this is a serious illness, and we don't look ill. Nobody would think that I'm sick, and I think that's probably the most reassuring thing in listening to other people with EDS talk, and how they describe this invisible illness, and that right there, it makes me feel better. It's kind of interesting. I visit the chiropractor pretty frequently, and the day that I got the official diagnosis of POTS, and I honestly don't know if I'm still preliminary. I think I've actually been diagnosed officially with Ehlers-Danlos, but I don't know. It's on my chart, so I'm guessing that's a positive diagnosis. But when I went to my chiropractor after that, and he said that it was the loosest that I had been like as far as like muscles and making the adjustments. And you know, loose, obviously, parts of me is always loose. But he said it was the easiest adjustment he had ever had. You know, he could just tell that like stress was, you know, I wasn't as stressed. And I think there's a lot to that, because just in being diagnosed and knowing that there is something, you know, this isn't just all in my head. It was reassuring, and then to know that other people feel the same. Other people with EDS feel the same way, that there's something wrong, and everybody discredits it because you look like you're fine. You don't look sick. That's why it's an invisible illness. So that's the start of my journey. I really can't believe I rambled this long, but that's my story. If you made it this far through this, I appreciate you sticking it out, and I hope maybe I help somebody else. If I can help one other person be reassured by what they're going through, then this was all worth it. Anyway, there's likely other videos to come as things progress, but this is my story, and hope you have a great day.